Hello and welcome to the Home Assistant podcast. My name is Phil. Joining me as usual, I've got Rohan. Hey Rohan, how you doing?
Hey, good. How you doing?
Good, thank you. Joining us today, a very special guest, Gavin. Welcome to the podcast, mate.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. You know, I've been listening to the show for a number of years. I think it's been like 2-3 years since I started using Home Assistant.
Nice.
But it's one of those shows that's always playing in the car when I'm driving, to the point my wife even knows about the show.
Ooh,
and she knows
it.
about Home Assistant because she's always hearing me listening to it.
That's fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, as usual, this episode of the Home Assistant podcast is sponsored by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabucasa. Easily access your local Home Assistant instance remotely for a small monthly fee that supports the Home Assistant and ESP Home projects. Configuration is done via the user interface, so no fiddling with router settings, SSL certificates, and any YAML. So, Gavin, our voices sound familiar to your wife, but your voice might actually sound familiar to some of our listeners. Why don't you tell us who you are and where people may have heard you from?
I am 1/3 of the crew at the HomeTech.fm podcast. I do that podcast with Seth and TJ. Seth's in Florida, TJ's Ohio. I'm based out of Pickering, Ontario. So that's where we cover like home automation in general. So we'll cover the latest news, the latest happenings, and we talk about the projects we're working on. That's probably our favorite part of the show, because we'll give you the real spiel, like if we like it, if we don't like it. We'll even revisit things later on and say why I still don't like it, right? We give you honest opinions.
It's important.
So yeah,
you got to
it's
double
very
down
important.
on, especially if you hate it, you got to double down on like, hey, I really don't like this.
Yeah, it's like I gave it another try and I really, really don't like this. So we've done that type of stuff. So, that's at hometech.fm. Check it out, get your news.
Nice. I love it. So, Gavin, you mentioned that you've been using Home Assistant for like 2 years now, is it?
Yes.
Is that where you started in your smart home journey, or were you using something previously before then?
No, I've started like my whole automation journey started with an argument with the wife. At 1 o'clock in the morning, we were arguing who was going to go turn the pool pump off, right? And I lost the argument, but while I was walking outside, I had this idea that, hey, I'm going to automate all this stuff, right? So that's where it started. So I got into smart things, and I quickly outgrew that. Though it was very cloud dependent at that time, and I didn't like the delays and stuff, right? And then I went over to HomeKit for a little bit, and I quickly outgrew that. Just there was no automations and stuff like that at that time. A lot of this, has grown since then. So back then they didn't have a lot of this stuff, right? So I quickly grew out of that and I got rid of all that stuff. And then I went into Habitat. And honestly, Habitat was very powerful, right? It's very good, very powerful. And I still like Habitat, but I just found to do what I wanted to do, I was doing a lot of development. They've come a long way since I've left them. So when I discovered Home Assistant, I just found that everything was already there. Somebody had already done all this stuff. So that's when I switched, and I just saw it was like endless what can be done. So that's when I ended up on Home Assistant.
That's cool. The community is definitely massive on Home Assistant. It's the most starred project on GitHub right now too, right? And so they had Paulus and Frank and stuff talk at the GitHub conference too. In I think that was October 2024, maybe it was November 2024, some of that early, just a couple of weeks prior to the time of recording of this. But the community is massive. But let me ask you, Gavin. You said you go back and revisit a lot of stuff. Have you revisited the ones I'm interested in particular are like HomeKit and Habitat?
Yes.
Okay, and you're still stuck with Home Assistant. Why or why not?
Main reason why it's like I find Home Assistant, those have gotten a lot better, right? And they've come a long way. But Home Assistant can do everything they do and more. I haven't found anything on their side that was better, right? That I can't say one of those systems does everything Home Assistant does and more. So that's kind of why I stick with Home Assistant. I know people love their HomeKit, the home dashboards and stuff like that. But the way I look at it is you can design that in Home Assistant. If you put in the work and you're a nice graphics artist and stuff. I know it's not built in. I know they're still working on their dashboards, but in Home Assistant, I can make something nice like that, look nice like that. You just got to know how.
Yeah. And I think there's a place for a HomeKit and those kind of things, right? Like for example, like for my parents, I would probably say, hey, go with HomeKit, or even like whatever native Google Home thing that they have, that kind of thing. Because today, at least, Home Assistant is way too complicated for them, right? And it's I think again, we are quite far down that road compared to where it was. I've been using Home Assistant since, I don't know, quite a while. I mean, we've been doing this podcast forever, right? So definitely since about 2015, maybe 16. So even with that, I just don't think it's there yet, right? Like in terms of like, can my mom pick it up and use it, right? And she's not a technical person at all, but to give her credit, she at some point realized that she could, just totally off topic, but she somehow realized that she could, if she downloaded XBMC whatever, and there's a couple of plugins, and she could
Wait, your
watch
mum worked this out?
random shows. And I I kid you not, Phil, she was a XBMC expert. Like, I went to her and I was
No,
like, "Hey, what plugin should I get?" Whatever, and she's like, "Oh, this and this." This is She is not remotely technical, right?
no.
She and,
That
I do
must have
not
been a
believe
while ago because you call it
this.
XBMC
Yeah,
still.
I'm reading something online. I'm like, this is a story that didn't happen. This is someone that like is
no,
just
no, no,
telling a
no.
tale. This story did not
It
happen,
was
Rohan.
it was early. It was actually around when I was playing around with Home Assistant first, right? So I'd moved into this place, and I guess my mom was bored, and I went back home one day, and she was like, "Yeah, look at what I did." And I was like, I
Wow.
think it started with like, "Hey, do you have like a Raspberry Pi or like a Blueberry Pi or something?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, I was like, "Why do you know what that is?" And then yeah, it was just. But sorry, I digress. Um,
Well, credit to your mum then. Like that's fantastic
Yes,
if she's able to do
yes.
that.
so but even despite that, I do think Home Assistant might be just past that cusp of just a little too complicated for her, right? Like,
Yes.
uh,
But they're getting better with things like the green, and all those all-in-one devices. Um,
Yeah, I still recommend some of those other systems. So my neighbor across the street, I have him on Habitat, right? I was like, this is great for you. So he's running Habitat. I was talking to somebody of the other day, and I got them even on the Amazon A Lady, right? Because of after hearing their requirements, I was like, you know what? You only have like two switches. Just get an A Lady and be happy. I'm not going to give them a Home Assistant recommendation in that case, right? So
no, that's cool. So you've gone back. You've decided it's still not up to par, up to scratch with what Home Assistant can do. At least at your technical level, right? It can do
yeah,
quite a bit more. And so, what are some of the advanced things that you're doing in Home Assistant?
it's not even, I wouldn't even say it's like advanced, but there were certain things that I would do for presence detection was one example, like when I do presence detection, I know a lot of people do GPS, but mine's kind of doubled down where I do ARP pings, right? And it's not just a ping, it's an ARP ping, and I found that that was the most reliable way to detect the phone on the network, on and off the network, right? I did so many tests with pings and stuff like that.
Can you just explain what the difference? I mean, I don't want to. I mean, just for the
Oh,
listeners, what is the
fine.
difference? Not for myself.
Rohan could probably explain the difference between them better than I can. I just know
Go.
that it's better.
Uh, yeah. I mean, go for it. I'll
Don't put me on the spot like
do
that. Like
it.
all I know is it's better. I can't explain what the difference is. I think it has to do with it detects the device on the network differently. Is it with the MAC address or something? I don't know, but I just know it's better than pinging a
Yeah.
device.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's so ARP basically is a table that maintains the IP address and MAC address kind of relationship, right? So saying that, hey, blah 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 IP is blah 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 MAC address, right? And ARP ping kind of leverages that to say, hey, let's use that, right? So when you install an ARP ping, you still use the IP address and so on. I forget exactly what it doesn't go, like, you can't route it between different VLANs and things like that, because it operates on a separate layer, right? It operates on layer two, so it's not routable. So it does leverage the MAC address. I forget exactly. I think it leverages from your ARP table, maybe.
Yeah,
But
we may be getting a little technical on this, with the art pig
And I'm
thing,
sure there's a
but
listener out there
yeah,
that didn't know that and has learned
yeah,
something today. So thank you for
and
that.
I'm sure you're gonna get a few emails, saying that we described it wrong. That's fine too. But all I know is that when the phone is asleep, when you try and ping it, it stops responding after a certain time, and that was always a
yeah,
problem. Where with art ping, it still detected your phone in the area, right? So it works so much better. And in
yeah,
Habitat, to do something like that, I created a Docker that would do and manage all that stuff just to get that information back into Habitat. Where on Home Assistant, there was just a plugin for it, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
So I was like, oh, great. Like I didn't have to worry about that. And sometimes I like creating custom things, but the problem with it is when there's an update, I have to fix it too, right? Whereas when you use a community thing, usually they fix it for you, and I prefer that. Less work for me.
yeah, yeah. That's fair.
So it's not really advanced things, but I just did things like that, like integrating my blue iris, at the time. And that was for all my cameras at the time. Other systems it was a little more difficult to do, right? On those systems I did a lot more programming on them because I developed a lot more. In Habitat's world they call it apps, right? To get the apps I wanted, I created my own apps, I created my own drivers. I spent a lot of time doing that, where on Home Assistant somebody else already did, so I didn't have to worry about it, right? The community is so big on Home Assistant that everything's almost already done. And when I find something that's done, if I don't like it, like if it's not that, if it doesn't work for me, I could just take that code and modify it and play with it and make my own version of it. And I'm good with that. Where on Habitat, some of the stuff was locked down. So I couldn't take what they put out and play with it, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, because and I guess that's where like the whole hack store came from, and custom components, right? Like just the ability to say, "Yep, you know what? I don't like this component, or I'm going to take the official component from Home Assistant, create my own copy of it, put it in custom components, and it just works, right? It's its own thing." So yeah, no, I totally see that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and keep in mind, I'm not bashing Habitat. I'm not bashing any of those other
No,
systems.
no.
They all have a thing. This is why I like Home Assistant, right? I still like Habitat. I still like you guys. If you're listening.
yeah.
So you mentioned just before that you've got Blue Iris integrated for your cameras. What sort of cameras have you got around the house? Are you running PoE, or have you got like another, proprietary system you're integrated?
So my backend, my networking is all Unify, right? So I've really decked out my house. I spent some money to make sure I had a strong Wi-Fi and stuff in my house, and all my cameras are Foscam. And I know some people are going ooh, but at the time, I was looking for a camera. They met all my requirements, right? So I've had them for a number of years, and my requirements had to do with Wi-Fi, not Wi-Fi. Yeah, Wi-Fi. They had nice floodlights. They had all the different pieces I wanted, and even in the light bulb color. And they even had an API I can work with, right? And that allowed me to integrate it nicely. So I put that into Blue Iris. And Blue Iris, I do a little more with Blue Iris. I always take it to the limit. So my Blue Iris is tied into my MQTT to send over status messages, like so. Recently I integrated LLMs into my Blue Iris and stuff like that, right? Into my Home Assistant. So basically when at night when I do Blue Iris always has issues with rain and snow. When it does its AI detection, it was always like someone's in the driveway, someone's in the backyard, someone's all around your house, making you very paranoid, right? And at
Yeah,
night
yeah.
when we're sleeping in bed, and my alarm's on and the house is in night mode, if someone's in the driveway, I set it up so it wakes me up to say somebody's in the
Mm,
driveway. But I
yeah.
had to disable that quickly because the built-in code project AI, it was failing for it. But now what I do is when Blue Iris detects a person in there, it actually takes a picture, sends it over to Chat GPT. What the question is, hey, is there somebody in the driveway? And then Chat GPT replies with a yes or a no. And then my logic will then wake me up if it confirms it, and it's cut down the false alarms,
Oh,
right?
Nice.
fantastic.
So that's how I've integrated that in. And in terms of pricing, like I pay for the Chat GPT AI, it's using probably $1 a month in calls to do something
Yeah.
like that, right?
That's not bad.
And
Yeah.
it's actually been really good and it works really well. There's a little delay, but now if someone's in the driveway, I get woken up at night because it sends a notification to my phone that overrides the do not disturb and stuff,
Mm.
and I get woken
Yep.
up. So I'll see who's in the driveway. Doesn't happen very often though.
And when you get that notification on the phone, does it include the image that was sent to ChatGPT? So then you can review it as another check and say, yes, there is a person there, or do you then have to open up the camera feed and go back and see, was there a person there or not?
Actually, I use actionable notifications, right? So when Home Assistant sends video notifications to my phone, it's actually when you open it up, it takes you right to the feed, to the video feed. And even on my watch, if I open it up on my watch, the video feed opens up on my watch, right? So I could just see what's happening right there, and it will say, person detected in driveway. Open it up, I can see my driveway, right? So the video feed will actually open up. It works really nice.
Remind me again, Blue Iris is only on Windows, right?
Yeah, so I run it in a
Yeah.
VM.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I was looking at it a while ago, and I was like, why didn't I try it? And I think that's what it was. It was because it was Windows only.
Yeah, and it's not the easiest system to work with. It can be daunting, and we always debate this on the HomeTech.fm podcast because Seth and TJ hate Blue Iris, but
Yep.
I'm a power user, so they always bug me to help them out. So
Nice.
yeah,
For what it's worth, I've heard a lot of good things.
Any thoughts about moving those cameras into Ubiquity? I know Ubiquity is starting with their Protect system to allow third-party RTSP cameras onto their ecosystem. Maybe not with the full AI capabilities, but have you thought about going into Protect with Ubiquity?
definitely been keeping an eye on that because Seth and TJ actually been playing with that. It's still in beta right now. Ubiquity opened up OnVIF support for cameras, but you don't get notifications and stuff like that. I think, and I'm hoping at some point they'll allow the OnVIF notifications so the camera can do all the work and then just say, "Hey, somebody's in your driveway, right? I detected a person, right?" But we will see where they go with this, and it's still very buggy, but it is something I'm keeping an eye on because the interface for that is so good. It's so nice. Obviously, it works with their cameras the best, but they don't have like I want floodlight cameras, and I want floodlight cameras that look normal, right? And my floodlight cameras, like, here's another thing I did recently with them. So they're all Wi-Fi cameras, right? But if Wi-Fi were ever to go down or anything like that, I lost control of them, and that was very important. That in the backyard when I let out the animal, that they come on and off, right? So I ended up pulling apart the cameras, pulling out all the LED bulbs and everything, and rewiring it with a Zeus relay, and putting in normal bulbs in it and everything. And then I used Z-Wave associations with my switch, right? If the Wi-Fi down, if the hub's down, if anything's down, it still works. No matter what, I got around all of that with my things, right? So that's a little extra I did with my, I sacrificed
Yeah.
them. I was nervous the first one. The second one, I was like, nah, this is a piece of cake. And now, yeah, the lights are all Z-Wave controllable now. So I, rewired them.
I was gonna say, does nothing exist like that today? Did you just open up a niche for yourself?
Nothing exists like that today. Like they have Z-Wave floodlights, right? Like I think HomeSeer makes one. I have a bunch of those in the basement. But they're just add-ons to a standard floodlight. But there's nothing I could find that had Z-Wave control of the device with a camera built in. Right?
Okay,
Like if
okay.
somebody like I always thought if somebody just made the
Yeah,
camera that you can wire in and we can buy the base and do everything else, that would be nice, right?
yeah.
But I guess there's some people don't like low voltage and high voltage in the same box. I don't know if there's something
Mm.
around it, but I just made my lights now. The floodlights are Z-Wave controllable, and the camera still stays on, and the power stays to it, and it works perfectly fine.
Hmm.
So you just mentioned that you're running Z-Wave for the around the house. You've got that association. Is that the only tech stack you're using, or I know I think you said HomeKit as well. Do you dabble into ZigBee or anything else like that?
I have everything. So I have a 2,500 square foot house. It has about 350 to 400 devices in it, and that's been built up over time. About 100 of them are Z-Wave. So I'm very big on Innovelli. All my light switches are Innovelli. And then I'm very big with Zeus. So I have a lot of Zeus sensors, and I really love Zeus. They're very good. They just work, right? But on top of that, I have ZigBee devices. So I do have some Aquara stuff in there now that I have it running reliably. I've been introducing a few more of those. I do have a couple Matter devices, but I have a love hate relationship with Matter, more hate, right at this point. Yeah, it's just not reliable. And I always find that when my Matter goes down, I have to reboot the Apple TV, and then it comes back up again, or something like that. And I'm just not liking Matter yet. I'll give it some time, but I keep a few devices around to play with that I can afford for them to go offline. I also use Bluetooth and RF for like the EcoWit stuff is all RF, right? And
Nice. Yeah,
yeah, so I use it for that. And then a lot of my devices are just Wi-Fi or Ethernet connected. So I have like a little of everything.
that's cool. Yeah, it's how do you like the EcoWit? I was actually looking at those too, and I was like, do I want to spend that much money right now? No, but because I clearly didn't get it. But they look pretty neat. I was gonna DIY it and just build my own, but then again, it goes into this bucket of stuff that I probably not
Yeah.
gonna ever get to.
The EcoWit stuff works really well. I'll be honest, like buy their base station and then tie that into Home Assistant because the antenna on that is so powerful it picks up everything around my yard.
Mhm.
So it gets all my soil sensors. I have their weather station out there, rain sensing station.
Oh, you have the whole gamut.
Yeah, like I have probably like 8 of their soil sensors for each zone and stuff like that.
Oh, wow, I didn't realize they had
Cool.
soil sensors.
Yeah,
Wow.
EcoWitt has the soil moisture sensors. That's where I kind of started on my soil moisture sensor journey was with
Mm.
Hmm.
them. But like it all and the base station actually sits on top of my rack in the basement. And it
Okay.
picks up the signal from outside. And some of the sensors are behind a brick wall at the side of my house and it still gets through it. So they're really reliable and I find their cost isn't that bad. They're actually pretty cheap.
That's pretty neat. Because I was looking at their like little all-in-one station thing. What's it called? Like it's called like the Wit Boy or something like that.
Yes.
And I know the way they do a couple of things is different. I don't know if it's different good or different bad. I like the fact that I like the form factor of it, but like they have the rainfall sensors that are haptic, right? So it's like your phone. It's testing for how many times it hits it. Do you find that accurate?
I actually have 2 water stations outside because I thought about that too, right? So,
Yeah.
one of them is that one where it's haptic. The other one is the one where it kind of funnels it into a little thing and
Yeah.
Yep.
then it flips it over and
The bucket.
empties. Yeah.
Yeah.
They pretty much measure the same amount. They're pretty
Wow.
much equal. So,
Interesting. Okay.
it was pretty good. Um, Seth has, what's the other popular one that looks like that, with the haptic on top?
I think I know the one you're talking about. I can't remember what it's called.
He has a similar one though,
Yeah.
and in Florida, the one issue he has is with the birds. They
Yeah.
land on it and they tap around, and then all of a sudden he gets
Oh.
notifications that it's raining. And he goes out and he yells at the bird. So then they sell this little thing you put on top of it with spikes in it,
Spikes, yep.
right? And the birds quickly learn that the spikes can help them support their nest. So they built their nest in the spikes, and
Oh my
so
gosh.
yeah,
That
so these are the things you got to
that's
consider, right?
actually hilarious. I didn't honestly I wouldn't have thought of that, but that is actually amazing. I've also seen the ones that are like again because I like I said I was looking at DIYing these, but there's like they're not cheap. They're like $100, but US I think $100. You get the little sensors with the dome and they reflect infrared I think to each other, and there's IR senders receivers, and basically based on how it hits the dome glass part, it changes. I don't understand the logic behind it, but apparently it forces the IR to refract, and based on that, it comes out as it's raining this much, or it's not,
Yeah,
right? And I don't know how well. I feel like there's a lot of things there because it's like I don't know. Yeah, maybe it works really well, maybe it doesn't, but I've never used it, but
the EcoWet ones work really well though. I have one automation where if it detects rain, it's starting to rain, and I have any door or window open, It will notify me.
Yeah.
It'll say, "Hey, you have a door or window open. Rain is starting." And I like it's in my yard. So it knows on my
Yes.
house it's starting to rain,
Ah, that's
Yes.
right?
cool. Yeah.
So then I get and I've had to call the neighbor. I've been out at times and I had to call the neighbor. Can you go close my windows for me, please?
Right.
Because yeah, it helped me.
Yeah. 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 That's cool.
Now, we were talking before about EcoWit just before we started recording, Gavin, and you mentioned that you had rebuilt the EcoWit integration for yourself with automations. Can you explain how you did that? Because that seems fascinating.
So Home Assistant has an EcoWit plugin, and this was probably last year I did this. I remember when I looked at the plugin, it worked pretty good, but it was exposing some of the sensors as the wrong type. And it didn't work with my dashboard logic, right? And there was no way I could change that type. To change that type, I would have to actually change the code. And it was like in a couple libraries deep, right? And I really suck at GitHub and the pull requests and all that stuff. I really can't do that stuff because I'm not really a developer, right? So I'm afraid if I submit some code, they're just gonna be like, "What is this junk?"
Look at
Right?
this
Like,
noob. Get him out of here.
yeah,
Ban
I
him,
know.
right?
And I probably instead I just rewrote the integration as an automation, right? And the thing is, I don't think people realize how powerful automations are when you can do things like have webhooks into it, because the EcoWit just sends the data over via webhook, and then in my automation using templates and using MQTT, I call commands that would put in MQTT data in that would then create the devices for me and populate with the data in there, right? So I actually wrote that one, and I wrote my Blue Iris one to work exactly how I wanted it, because Blue Iris AI, I only care if it's a person, a car, or an animal, right? Um, but they would be coming back and saying bear or banana or this or that. And I'd be like, I don't care about that stuff. I want bear as an animal. So I rewrote it so that it reported only those three things, if it's just an animal, that's all I care, right? Um, so if you're ever looking to create, like, look to see if you can do it in automation. They're very, very powerful when you get into templating and YAML. Like, people hate YAML, but I'm a fan of it.
No, I love, I think the templating is Home Assistant's powerful, little secret
Yep.
weapon, right? There's so many tools in that little arsenal that you can use. So, no, I
Yeah.
totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And macros, like I've rewritten all my dashboards in macros. So all my dashboards are basically they're automatically generated. I base it based on, the floor, the area, and a tag, for example, right? And when I get a new device, I just have an entity. I just put it in the room I want, and I, tag it how I want, and it gets added to all the dashboards and all the places and all the
Oh,
calculations
wow.
where it needs to be, and I don't have to edit any dashboards.
Nice.
So it's less work for me, but I took me a while to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. That is actually really neat. When you built that out, what did you, I mean, what kind of logic did you put into it? So like for example, a device that might move around, would that have just kind of everything, or would that also kind of customize based on like presence and where you are and that kind of thing too? Because I have seen a lot of folks doing that, where like for example they use like ES presence or something like that, and it's like, hey, I'm in my office room and therefore I'm going to just show you whatever's in the office, right? Like is it that kind of logic in there?
I haven't gotten that far yet. I was playing around with that, and then it got put in the box. Another thing came up, probably a Home Assistant update came up, and I spent time fixing it. Right. But I was looking at that type of thing where, I would be in my office, and when I open the app, it would know I'm in the office and show me the office dashboard, for example. But I haven't gotten to that point yet. Right. I've just been building out the dashboards, and like I'd have a dashboard for each room. But in Home Assistant, you see it as a single dashboard, right? And then it's just a little bit of code, but then I use hashtags to determine which room to display, right? So it cuts down coding, it cuts down the number of dashboards I have. It's like it's complicated, and this is where I hope Home Assistant can get to at some point. Is when you add a device, it just shows up where you need it.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But might be a bit.
We'll be waiting
I
for a
mean,
while.
they're making strides, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's one of those things where it's it's priorities, right? Do they do that or do they build out other stuff, kind of thing?
But that's what I love about Home Assistant though, is if I can't
Yeah,
wait, I can make it myself.
yeah,
Right. And that's
hundred
the
percent,
beauty of it.
100%. Um, so one of the things we like to ask as well, like kind of everybody, is what's your favorite automations like that you're running around the house? Like it sounds like you're doing some really cool stuff. Out of those, what are your like top, let's say, two or three?
Um. Okay, I have two that are my favorite. They might not seem exciting to some people, but I put a lot of work into getting this, and it works great for me. So with my cameras now, I have a small dog, right? And in our backyard, we get raccoons, we get skunks, we get foxes, all sorts of things.
Mm.
So on all my cameras, they're set up so that if they detect in my backyard any of those animals, it turns on my lights, right? And it kind of lets us know when we go to let out the dog, hey, there's an animal outside, don't let the dog out. And, the wife's even like now knows, hey, there's something outside, don't let the dog out, right? And
Yep.
it saved
Yep.
us a few times from skunks. But I mean, to get to that point, it was kind of hard to get it reliable, right? Because, like I
Right.
said, now you're fighting with rain and snow, and it always detects that as, animals out there
Yeah.
too, right? But I call them motion lighting because when that happens too, when the lights are triggered by like a motion like that,
Hmm.
um, my Innovelli lights they pulse, right? To say, hey, I've been triggered by motion. There's something moving around, and then after the motion's done for a certain amount of time, the lights will go off, and you can enable or disable that by just pushing the little Innovelli button on that. So it's a mode I can, if
Cool.
you have company over, and we're all going to be outside, you don't want the lights turning off on you.
Yeah.
So you just press the button and now it goes into disabled mode, and, it pulses differently and it will stay on all the time, and stuff like that. So, I have that in a number of my rooms now. So you can actually, by looking at the switch, you can see that that light was triggered by motion. And it will turn off on its own. You don't have to worry about turning it off. It'll go off eventually on its own, right? But to get
Yeah.
that logic, get it there, it took a bit of work because I want it to be very reliable,
Right.
right? That's the hard part.
Do you augment that with AI as well, like to detect, an animal as opposed to just snow?
Yes, I built that into Chat GPT, so when it detects something out there, it will send it off to Chat GPT and say, "Is there really an animal out here?" And it will tell me yes or no. Chat GPT gets tripped up sometimes, but it reduces the number of
Yeah.
notifications I get for that. So it's so worth it doing that because the local AI processing and the local project stuff just struggles when it snows or rains.
Mhm.
That's just
Yeah.
the way it
Interesting.
is.
That was actually going to be my question: is did you try any local AI running like on like Olama or something like that? That would have kind of solved that problem for you. But I
Not
guess,
yet.
yeah,
Not yet because I don't want to put that on my server. It has two video cards, but they're already one's
yeah,
being used by Blue Iris and the other one's being used by everything else. And I
yep,
didn't want to throw that on there in the extra stress. And I was just like, you know what? Let me just use the Chat GPT. It's really good,
Yeah.
yeah,
right?
yeah. It's I don't
And
blame you.
where are you positioning cameras in the house, like in the backyard, to be able to detect animals? Because we get a lot of possums near our house, right? So they're up in the trees,
I
and
get them too.
so
Yeah.
yeah. How have you positioned cameras to be able to detect those? Right, like because I know when there's a possum out there because it's running across the roof, right? But they're so skittish that you never get to see them. Right, you open the door and they're gone. Right.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
how are you like angling cameras to detect them or getting them?
Around my house, so all around my house, they had floodlights when I bought this house. So I just basically replaced them with floodlight cameras.
Mhm.
And there's like basically it covers my whole backyard. I can see all around my house. So all of our animals, they usually come walking in through one of the specific gates where we have a piece of grass there, right? So I always see them coming in through there, and then you'll see we have a cat that comes around nightly. He'll come from the other side and walk around our house, and I have a chipmunk back there, so he's looking for that chipmunk every night. So I know he
Right.
hasn't caught him. The chipmunk's been there for years, so we're good. But like I have full coverage all around my house. There's just one dead zone that I haven't, and it's just because I don't have the power there for it. But if I ever got is it the Real Link camera that does the 180? If I ever got one of those,
Yeah.
I would get all
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
coverage there. So, yeah,
You could also do a fisheye, right? If there's not a,
yeah.
if, even if not the 180, it'll give you like a nice. The only problem with the fisheye is sometimes it's not as clear, right? So
Yeah, hopefully TJ's not listening, but I know he wants to come up to Ontario, and that's one of the projects he's going to run some power for me or some POE for
nice.
me there.
Yeah.
So he will be doing that. I'll talk to him. His wife will make him do it.
That's funny. That's wicked. That's cool.
My second favorite automation has to do with irrigation. I know a lot of people hear me talking about soil and moisture sensors on the HomeTech.fm. So basically, last year I got the EcoWitt sensors. I have an irrigation system and I use the ratio, but I found that its prediction of moisture and stuff like that was killing my lawn. Like I was either overwatering my lawn or underwatering my lawn. I hated its logic. So I basically rewrote it all in an automation. And basically, every night the automation would look at all the soil moisture sensors and calculate, which zones needed the water to be watered and stuff. And it would schedule it overnight. So it only watered where water was needed. Right. And the thing where I took it a little further was that it also knew how long to water it based on calculations of how much water or how long to run the water to get that zone up to a certain amount.
Yeah. Nice.
So like almost like a percentage per minute type of
Yeah.
calculation, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if it
Yeah.
was like 30% and I needed to get it to 50%, it would know that, oh, it's got to go 20%, that's going to take 40 minutes and run it just for that. And I found
Yeah.
the first year I did that, I saved so much water.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It was ridiculous because I have other zones that are under trees and they get shade and there are a lot
Right.
more moisture and I didn't have to water those ones, right?
Yeah. Now you're overwatering over there where, and those ones are like you're getting mushrooms and whatever over
Yes,
there. And
exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's where I took that too. So now that system, it after saving me so much money, it was worth it. But it's the whole soil moisture sensors, like the EcoWit ones are great, but they stick out of the ground. They have a little flashing light on them. You can't run over them with the lawnmower. I've had numerous people step on them and break. They snap. I've stepped on three of them. They've snapped. I love the data I get, but I'm looking for the perfect outdoor soil moisture sensor, and I haven't found it yet. I've been playing around with another one. Oh, I can't remember their name. It sits flat, but their whole model behind it, they're building AI into it. They're like, they want you to pay for a subscription. It's cloud based, etc., etc. I'm like, I can't back all that. Like, I understand what they're trying to do, but I think they're just overkilling. They're overcomplicating the whole thing, especially when it keeps going offline, right? For server upgrades.
Yeah. Do you find that is that one like a Kickstarter or is that like an actual?
It's a product now, but I wonder if they actually went to production fully with it. I think they did. What was the name of that one? Uh, I don't need to give the name of that one because I'm not happy with it. I've mentioned it on the show a few times. We've revisited. I gave it another shot this year, and
Sure, sure.
they did another upgrade, and now it's offline. And now I just pulled it out of the ground and threw it in the sink. And I'm like, I can't bother to get this working again. Plus, it was over $100 per sensor, and I have multiple zones. So I was
Ooh.
like, yeah, I was like, it was getting expensive with that one, but it sat flat and I could run over it with the lawnmower. So that's the only positive.
So, question for the EcoWit moisture sensors then, are they all battery operated or are they plugged in? Like, do you have to go around replacing batteries on these things every few months?
They're battery operated, but the batteries last a very long time. I don't remember when last I replaced the battery, and I don't even pull out the batteries. I think I replaced one battery, but they're very good with batteries. I haven't had to replace it out there. And I remember in Canada here, our summers are very short, right? So I may have these out in the yard for 6 months of the year, and then I put them in a box. I leave them on and everything like that, and
Yeah, I wonder if you can, because you get those soil moisture sensors, whatever, like you get those kits, right? So I wonder if there's a way to design your own such that it is trample proof for better or for worse, right? Whether it's by a lawnmower or feet or whatever that might be. I don't know what that would look like. Or you could maybe come up with a PCB that's like super flat, right? And just
I've seen I've people have talked about it, but everything was ESP home based and you had to run power to it and stuff like that. And the parts of my lawn, I'm not getting power to it.
Yeah.
Right. So I
No, I
never
think
wanted
if
to.
you do a if you do like a even a tiny little solar thing with the battery on, like a lipo battery or something, that might
I'm working with well, I'm not working with, but I'm throwing that idea at my friends over at Apollo Automation, right? So
yeah,
they
there you go.
they um they make some great sensors, air quality sensors they have, and they give you all the information you want about your air quality. I haven't seen another sensor better than this. And they're all ESP home based, but they just released soil moisture sensors for in the house. And one of them was actually battery powered. And I was like, brilliant. You have a soil moisture now, you have a battery. So I was like, now it has to lay flat and be an outdoor moisture sensor. I got all excited. And I'm throwing the idea at everybody I talk to is all I need one is flat and outdoor and give me my soil and moisture. I don't even care if it's accurate. Just be consistent because I recalculate everything anyway. I just need to know a level and what I want it at, and then I can go up and down from there.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm just looking at their site now. That's these are really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, they have a bunch of sensors. They sent me a bunch of things. Uh, I have like one mounted in my office here, and because I spend most of my time in here doing work and stuff, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
when I'm in here and the air quality is low, it turns on the fan that I have in here, the filter,
Yeah.
and you can see it getting better and better. And then when it gets to a certain point, it turns it back off,
Oh, that's
right?
great.
So that's like an automation there, right?
Yep.
And yeah, their sensors. They just released a Christmas tree lightable ornament. It's battery powered as well. But they're giving all their proceeds to charity, so they're making money. Like they're giving away money for that one. So like it's a small little basement company, but they do some great work.
Yeah, that's really cool. I know I've heard a lot of good things about their like air sensors and their presence sensors.
Yes.
So I haven't used them myself, but it is pretty cool that that's they're working on other stuff too, like the plant sensors and stuff, like you said.
Yeah. And they're going into the battery powered stuff. So ESP home battery powered devices can take you to a next level, I find.
Mm. Yeah, because ESP Home
Yeah.
by itself is powerful enough. It's just, yeah, getting power to all those devices, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I'd love a Bluetooth proxy for like a ESP Home Bluetooth proxy that's powered, like battery powered. Then you could have it out in the garden or something.
The Apollo automation, yeah, in the Apollo automation devices, they do multiple things. And one of them is a Bluetooth proxy that you can actually have it. So like you'll have it sitting in your living room or whatever, and it does multiple roles. And that's great about them too, right?
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, that is pretty cool.
Yeah, so those were my top two automations. And like I said, they may not be the most exciting things, but for me, that's what keeps me happy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you working on any of your own hardware or whatever, anything like that? What are you doing on that front?
No, I'm not a hardware person. I'm not even a programmer, So I hack together stuff. I get things working. I went to school for programming, but I don't do it as my full time job. And hardware is hard. Like we've done an interview with Eric from Innovelli, and I'm always amazed because he's so open about the challenges he has with hardware, and it's hard. It's very hard, and I will never want to get into that, right? So I'm basically doing stuff around my house, and when people come over and they see the stuff and they're like, "Oh, that's so cool! I want that at my house," I just look at them and say, "No, I am not supporting you." One home assistant update, and yeah, you're dead.
Yeah. 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 I totally feel that.
Yeah,
It's you gotta be careful almost, right? Who you offer up home assistant stuff to. It's cool at work. We have a little community of just a bunch of people, but that's really cool because it's all everybody just sharing whatever, right? And saying,
yeah.
"Hey, well, maybe try this," and "Hey, try that." And there's everybody of all kind of walks of life, which is nice. So it's like it's convenient. And you meet people that way too. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's cool. My company, I have a few people I ran across, and they're like, "Oh my god, we heard your podcast." I was like, "I didn't
Yeah.
even know you listened." But
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, we use Home Assistant. We have this 3D printer, and yeah, they keep me updated stuff too."
That's funny. That's cool. Yeah. That's always fun. Honestly, freeform, Gavin, anything you want to share, you want to talk about?
Just like other automations. Oh, I like my pool automations. So of course I have the pool pump control, right?
That's how you got into home
That's
automation.
the one that started it all right there. But then I also measure the pool temperature using, again, EcoWitt has a dedicated pool temperature device. So I mount it in my skimmer. And I did measurements like I had multiple around the pool, and I found that no matter where I put it, it was still the same temperature, even when I put it in the skimmer. So now I just leave it in the skimmer. And again, it's just a relative number. I don't care if it's actually 21 degrees. I just find the number that I'm comfortable at. And I say, now, okay, it has to be at 25 degrees for me to be comfortable. Right. So I threw it in there. I also have a water level monitor in there because I did have a leak at one point and it destroyed the pump. Right. So now when the water falls below a certain level, it actually turns off the pump, right? As a backup, right? And that's also mounted in my skimmer and everything like that. And that's just a Z Wave. It was just a Z Wave contact sensor that allowed external contacts.
Yeah. Is it
Yeah.
one of the Fabaro ones? Like, I think like the
Yes.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got heaps of those around. They're great little devices,
Yeah,
aren't they?
yeah. I also have one on my dryer that does the same thing with to monitor my dryer, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's just mounted in there, and I create 3D printed a little holder for it and everything like that. So it works really nice. And then I threw one of the lines from my irrigation system into the skimmer in the pool. So now if when I need to top up the water on the pool, I could just say, "Hey, a lady, turn on the pool water for 15 minutes," and it will top up my pool. Right. I
Yeah.
have extra safeties in there where, it will turn it off if it's running for too long and stuff like that, just to be safe. And that's built into the controller. But like there's that's some of the cool pool stuff. I never got into the automation of like the pool filter and stuff like that. I was
Hmm.
looking at I have a pressure sensor and I was going to make an ESP home thing. But then when I started getting into getting power to it and stuff like that, I gave up. So talking to the Apollo guys again, I'm going to be like, hey, if you throw a battery powered one into something like this, you could get the
There
pool
you go.
people. We'll see.
So you mentioned just then that you've got some safety features, and one of them is in the controller, right? So the controller can shut off that. Is that in the Z Wave controller, or where is that? What controller are you referring to there? Is it?
In when I'm through the irrigation line, when I tell it to turn on the water of the pool, the
Yep.
actual ratio system will only run it this zone for so long.
Gotcha.
And
Yep.
that's perfect. So all I do is I just when I turn it on, I leave it on there because it runs locally and it's not cloud based. I can reboot my hub. It will still turn it off and not leave it running. Like there's certain things in my home assistant where I yeah, I need it to be reliable. I need it to turn off when it turns off, right?
Right.
Because it could be dangerous. And this is one of those where I don't mess with it. I know some people like to hack away at their heating, right? Like their
Yeah.
furnace and stuff
Hmm.
like that. That's also one of the things I don't really try to replace what ecobee is doing. I
Yeah.
just I just work with it. So like when my fireplace on, it automatically throws it into a fireplace mode, right? Which
Uh,
basically stops using the sensor in that room, but adjusts where it reads from so that, when you leave a door open, it doesn't turn off the thermostat. It just adjusts the heating cooling on it,
Hmm.
right?
yeah.
So that, like if you're in winter, say a sensor went bad and all of a sudden triggered that it's open and you're not home and it turns off your thermostat, our pipes will freeze, right?
Yeah.
After a while.
Yeah.
So I set it so that, it will not, it's not that it turns it off. It just sets it so that it's 18. At 18, it will start heating the house again, right? At 18 is really cold anyway. But and this is degrees Celsius because we're in Canada. Oh, you use Celsius too, Phil.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, so there
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
go. All right, I'm just used
Yeah.
to our guys always saying, "Well, what's that in Fahrenheit?"
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, when it comes to certain things, it has to be reliable, and I've worked very hard to make
Yeah.
sure they are always working.
Yeah, that's interesting because I've never thought that like your house needs to stay heated because otherwise it will freeze, right? Like
Yep.
Yeah,
that
yep.
Yep.
seems foreign,
I
right? But
I that's the same set point I use too, is 18 is below that. It's like fire up whatever, right? Everything if you have to. And
Yeah,
it's not that your pipes are gonna freeze at 18. It's just I just don't want to get past there and then find out the hard way, right? It's
yeah,
and some people set their automation to turn off the thermostat, and I'm like, don't do that. Leave the thermostat on. Just adjust the levels of it. Don't. There's safeties built into it.
yeah, I mean, depending on where in the world you are, maybe that is an option, right? Like if you're in, I don't know, somewhere hot, like
True.
like Thailand or something like that, sure, you can totally do that, right? And it's that might be okay. But yeah, if you're in a place like I don't know, anywhere north of, I don't know, like mid Midwest US, it's probably not a good idea
Yeah.
to do that, right? And considering a
Where
lot of
things
our listeners
freeze.
are there are north or south, right? I don't know how many around the equator listeners we have. We should it's an interesting stat, but yeah, uh, would be worth looking at, or would be worth keeping on.
Yeah. And I don't know. What do you guys use for voice? You guys use voice at all?
a lady, as you
Hey,
like to,
lady.
yeah. She's frustrating me
Yeah.
at the minute, but she's there.
And that's basically what I use. And like the wife's been along the journey with me, but I've never thrown a lot at her. What happens,
Yeah,
she's gotten very good at using the A lady now. Like, and what happens is she'll see me use it. She'll be like, "Oh, you could do that."
Mm,
Like instead of, she used to go out and check the pool temperature on the thermostat, and then I programmed it and say, "Hey, A lady, what's the temperature in the pool?" And she's like, "You could do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then
yeah,
she starts doing it. So over time, she learns that every light in the house can be controlled. You just have to say it, like this. And
right,
so yeah, it's been the most reliable one for us.
nice.
yeah, I don't know what it is. I think it's just my home at the moment. Like we've had Wi-Fi problems here today, right? And I had ZigBee problems basically all of 2024, and I just got them working nicely, and something's changed. Either maybe a neighbor's got new Wi-Fi or something, but my ZigBee issues are back again. I had to move my Z-Wave stick into my office because the home assistant green, which I had in the other part of the house, wasn't powerful enough for my Z-Wave network. And now I'm just getting like lights are on when they shouldn't be on. Like, I've got Fibaro dimmers
Mm,
everywhere, and for whatever reason they're on, but Z-Wave JS is saying they're off. And even if I ping the device, it's not refreshing the values. Um, I have all those gremlins back, right? And then, yeah, it gets frustrating, right? When you get those little gremlins
yeah,
in. And I don't know if it's maybe we've just automated it really well, or maybe not enough, but haven't been really using like voice that much to control um, anything. Like, we walk into a room, the lights turn on, right? So there's no real
yeah,
need to yell out, hey, turn this on. So,
And when it comes to the automation thing, the reason I haven't really done a lot of that is because it's never been reliable enough, right? Like, especially when it turns off when you're in the, like, I don't want the light to have to sit on for 20 minutes after I leave the room before
yeah,
it can honestly say somebody's not there. But with the introduction of millimeter wave, this has
yes,
made a
I was
huge
I was gonna
difference.
ask, are you doing any presence with MMW stuff, right? It's
In the office I'm sitting in here now, I have a millimeter wave sensor. I love it's the Aquara FP2. I love it because as soon as
mm,
I walk in the room, it turns on my lights. Like 5 seconds after I leave the room, it turns off the lights. It never does it while I'm in the room. And I talked about this on the show too. Picked up the Tuya presence sensor. It's also a
mhm,
millimeter wave and PIR sensor, similar to the Everything One sensor.
right,
But the
yeah.
yep.
only difference is this one was battery powered.
How long does that last? Because from what I understand, millimeter wave is fairly power hungry.
Yeah. So the difference with this one, so I did look that up and I saw people complain that it lasts 6 months. I'm doing my own personal test to see maybe that's based on where you put it or how busy the room is.
Right.
So I mainly have it right now. I'm using it in my bathroom, right? And how it works is the PIR sensor is what triggers it first. Right. So it's only just
Yeah.
looking out using the PIR. So when you walk
Mm,
into a room, the PIR hits you,
Yeah.
then it wakes up the millimeter wave and then determines if
right.
you're still in the room, right?
Yeah.
And that's how it saves the battery life there, right? And in my last few weeks of using it, like my light doesn't turn off on me when you're using your bidet or you're in the shower. It knows that you're in that bathroom, but
Yeah.
it's also the PIR sensor is using it, so it doesn't go through walls and pick you up walking by the bathroom either, right? Because it's the PIR
Yeah.
sensor that triggers it. So it
That's
works
actually
really
interesting.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm doing my own tests. I probably will report back 6 months from now when I have to replace the batteries. It runs on two double A's, but I mean, if I have to hack something and 3D print something to put a D cell battery in there to make it last over a year, I would do that because it works that well, right? Millimeter wave,
Yeah.
but
But you know what? 6 months is, I don't know. I think 6 months is reasonable. I think that's not bad for
Well,
something that power hungry. I think it's pretty good.
it depends what room it's in, though, right? Like I'm thinking, if you're in a bedroom and you're then sleeping for
Yeah.
8 hours, and then it's checking for 8 hours, are you still asleep? That's probably
Yeah.
a waste of energy, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
So I think the strategy would be you kind of pick and choose where you use different types of these sensors, right? So, like, for example, I've got an FP2 in my living room wired in, and that I think is what makes the most sense because my living room's by my kitchen and whatever. It's the area where we spend the most amount of time realistically, right? Other than maybe bedroom where we're sleeping or like my home office, right? Those are probably the three biggest. But for other
yes.
stuff, it might be a good idea to like bathrooms is a great use case, Gavin. Like I think
I
it'd be
never have power in the bathroom other than at the light switch or the light, right? Like it's not like
totally.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
have
it's a wet
I
room,
don't have an
right?
outlet. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So it works great in that room. So yeah, in six
Yeah.
months I will know if the battery life's there. But I also did order. Innovelli has some red switches coming with millimeter wave built in.
I
And
wish Innovelli would
That's
do like Australian stand, like because Z-Wave, is region, right? So I
yeah,
wish they would like do UK and US, or just international spectrum, right? Like, so good.
Yeah, I feel your pain. I feel your pain. But they're
yeah.
building the millimeter wave into it, and they just delayed it again till probably March of next year before I get them. But that's because they changed vendors, I think, with the chip, and now
Mm,
they have it so you can do ranges and zones and stuff like that in the detection. I just want room presence. Is somebody there or not? But they have a lot more features. But now that will be built into the Switch, it's
Yeah.
one less device and it's powered at that point too.
But that's the nice thing, right? Is you don't it's not this ugly thing. Not that the FP2 is ugly, but it's not, I don't know, it's an extra thing
mm,
on a in a place, right? Like
Yes.
I don't know a better way to explain that,
Extra
but
device. It's another
yeah,
device. Yes.
it's it's just I don't want to call it clutter because it serves a purpose, but it is cluttering up the like
Yep.
table or
yep.
that kind of thing, right? So when it's on the wall sensor, that or when it's on the
On the light
wall
switch.
on the light switch, I think that's a really cool place for it, right? And I'm hoping that we're going to see a bunch of stuff like that coming out. Not only from Innovelli, but other folks too.
I
Sorry.
like I
Yeah.
like when devices do that and they do multiple roles. It's the main reason I'm with Sonos is because Sonos has the A lady built in. So I don't have to have
Mhm.
an A lady there and a Sonos speaker, right? I just
Yeah.
have one
Yeah.
speaker and the Sonos Beam picks up my voice way better than any other speaker I've had,
Really
right?
interesting.
It's
Yeah.
really good.
I will say I've got Sonos ones, and they are restricted, right? Like, so for example, the Ring camera, I
Oh
don't
yeah.
think does, like, you can't, yeah, you can't action that. But you can't communicate, so you can't do like Alexa. Almost said her name. You can't do the A lady voice calls with the Sonos speakers, which if you want to do like a broadcast message, I don't think works either. It will receive it, but I don't think you can send it.
I think the broadcast
Oh,
does
interesting.
work. Yeah, my wife broadcasts stuff to me
Ah,
all the
okay.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do find it a bit restricted, and I do have one Sonos speaker. For whatever reason, the Amazon Echo integration has just decided to not work on that speaker. I now have the Sonos voice integration on that speaker, and it's weird. Like, I just, because it's in the
What?
bedroom, and my wife said to me, "Why is there like an African American man speaking to me in the bedroom?" Because it's like this deep American voice, like,
Yes.
what the weather is. He's like, "Who is that?" I'm like, "Oh, it's the Sonos voice assistant. I'm trying to work out how to get the Amazon Echo back on there. It's not working at the moment." Uh,
They've got the Barry White on, like,
yeah, 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 exactly. It's exactly like it's really like
that's
yeah.
what? I
Yeah,
didn't that's so cool. I didn't know that that was their voice, like,
but he's completely dumb. Like you
think
can ask him to play some music, sure, but if you ask him, what the weather is, what the time is, like, go into your
Yeah,
Sonos app and set this up, and
yeah.
like
what? Oh, that's annoying. It's I don't know. I'm getting fed up with my Amazon Echoes. I was actually talking to somebody today, and I was like, I I'm ready to get rid of it. I don't. It's a at this point because you kind of build a collection over time. At this
yeah.
point, it's now a cost to do that, right? And it's like even whatever Boxing Day, Black Friday, all these sales come up. It's
Mm,
still like minimum what $60 a pop to replace those with like I don't know Google Homes or something else, right? And it's
but I don't
You know
think the
what? The
grass is
grass
greener.
always seems.
Yeah.
I was gonna
a
say
hundred
it.
percent, right? And it's like it's the same thing, right? So it's I don't know. I've actually I was watching Reed like Smart Home Solver as one of his videos where he has the Pixel tablet on the stand, like on the base, whatever they call it, right? And he's got that in his kitchen, and I've got an Echo Show in my kitchen. I was like, that's actually nice because what he does with it is he has it displaying the Home Assistant dashboard, right? And it's
Yes.
like, okay, that's actually kind of useful. But what I don't want is I don't want another wake word just for that area, right? And it's like I can tell you I will not say, the Google wake word as opposed to the Amazon wake word just because I've had the
Mm,
echoes for how many years now, right? Whatever, you're
Yeah.
just so used to saying that. And yeah, so that's kind of where it breaks down, unless it's just very different, right? Like I know a lot of people play with Jarvis and a lot of people play with okay, Nabu. Oh, I should say it, Jarvis or
Yeah.
Nabu, uh, all of that, right? Like the Home Assistant voice, some of the default ones or some of the even a custom one, right? So it's
mm,
Yeah, when you look at that, is what is the competition? What is out there when
yeah.
it comes to voice assistant? You have the Google, you have the Amazon, you have the Apple, and you have the Home Assistant one. You look at the competition, and all have their issues. Like I have them all, and I ended up on this one because it had the least amount of issues,
Mm,
but they're
yeah,
all dumb in their own ways. I'm waiting on the Home Assistant one. A lot of people are hyped about that and they're waiting on that. And I totally get it, right? But then I also look into like device integration with that. And I still got to wait to see how well, there's rumors they're making their hardware. How well is that hardware going to work? Like when
right.
I get it in my hands and I put it on this desk and start using it, is it going to work as well? And it's going to be another device in all my rooms. Do I really want to do that? So
Yeah,
there's a lot to consider, and it's not, I always think in the back of my head when I'm doing anything, it's not just me using this.
totally agree. I mean, if the one thing the Amazon Echoes did really well, really early was that ease of use, ease of operating it. And I think, and I'm saying Amazon Echoes, but I think Google did a good job at that as well. I think at this point though, it's like, I don't know, it's rough.
mm.
It is. It's I feel like it's doing less than it used to do, right? Like
Yes.
and I know they have pulled back some functionality. The lists one,
Yeah.
ticks me off to no extent, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't work well at all. Uh, we use any list at home, so now we have to say tell any list to add this to the shopping list, and then it will add it to its own shopping list instead. And the amount of times I've had to run back out to go to the grocery store because it's hey, I forgot this because it was actually
Wrong
like
list.
it's not any of our fault, right? It's not like even whether I said it or my wife said it or whatever. It's not we said the right thing, and I've even heard it when my wife would say, "Hey, add I don't know tomatoes, whatever," and it goes to the wrong shopping list, right? And it's frustrating. It's beyond frustrating. I don't know. A part of me is like, do I look at the home pods? Because I feel I don't know. I actually know very little about the home pods, and like it's still all at minimum it's equal to Apple HomeKit, which isn't necessarily a terrible
But
thing.
I think the fact that when you compare
Maybe
voice assistants, it's always Google Home or Amazon Echo. Like Siri, sorry,
I know.
like she's never mentioned, right? Or they're never mentioned, which tells me that it's probably not a good,
No.
road to go down.
Yeah, I mean, I few people I follow on YouTube. Actually, one person I don't even follow, but they just keep showing up on there because I just like watching their videos. Like maybe I should subscribe. And they like again, they love their Apple ecosystem, whatever. And there's a lot of Apple native ecosystem people, which obviously I'm not one of those, being a Home Assistant user. But and I want to say that those HomePods have Matter support, maybe as the coming into music assistant or coming into home assistant to act as a speaker. One of the things that I'm learning, so I mentioned this on a earlier episode, is I'm considering leaving Spotify Premium because of the prices going up for YouTube Premium, which is
Mm.
around a similar price. It's maybe a couple of bucks more, but you get YouTube Video Premium as well as music. And but you can't send URLs to stream to an Amazon Echo.
See, there's always a
Right?
restriction. There's always a
Yeah.
catch.
It is beyond frustrating. Nobody is making the perfect device, and
So
I'm looking at Home Assistant. I'm looking at Nabukasa for
the
for this.
savior.
Solve our problems, Paulus.
If you're keeping an eye out, keep an eye out on the Google ones. Just I only say that because I saw recently they're now
Mhm.
building in their AI. I don't know how good their AI is and stuff like that, but that's the one piece I think would just take like if Amazon just took like ChatGPT and added it in to handle certain things, right? In the back end, instead of trying to make their own, it would be so much better because then I could say blinds, lights, I could say blind shades, covers, whatever, and it would know open, make it brighter in here, open that thing on the window, right? Where I don't have to be specific.
I thought they were working on. I thought they
It's
were
been
working on
delayed.
that, but I thought they were wanting to charge, and that's where they lost me. I'm not paying for that.
Me
Um,
neither. Me
it's
neither.
it is in the long run, it will be cheaper for me to buy a GPU used, run whatever Olama or something like that locally, and use that,
Yeah.
right? And like, listen, I just need you to turn on the lights, man. like, we've
Yeah.
been talking about this for what 15 minutes now, and I'm like, hey, man, just turn on the damn lights.
In the end, that's all you want. And they all have their issues. I've messed with them
Yeah,
all. They all have their
yeah,
issues.
yeah,
Cool. Well, Gavin, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a hoot talking to you. Yeah,
yeah.
shout out, where can people find you again? Where's that podcast that people can find you on?
It's at www.hometech.fm. You can find us on the social. We have our hometech.social Mastodon server. If you're looking to get on Mastodon, join us on there. Seth
Nice.
Seth stays up many late nights keeping that thing up to date. Um, and he's gonna laugh because we're actually a few versions behind now, but
No problem.
so check us out over there. We got a lot of things going on. I mean, we just released today, the podcast. I think we were doing Navimo. We had them on the show.
Nice.
So robotic
Nice.
lawnmowers. That's kind of one of my future things I'm looking at.
Ooh.
It's just my neighborhood. Someone drives by, grabs it, runs away. But they got work. They got things to handle stuff like that. So
Yeah,
check
that's
that
cool.
out.
Cool.
That's
Well, thank
wicked.
you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank
It
you.
was great being here. Thanks, guys.